Welcome around the Workstand.
Susie, you're the best.
We're here. I cannot believe that I guess I just got to see your beautiful faces in person. And then I took a week off vacation, so it feels like it was yesterday.
Where did you go?
Yeah.
I was in the Durango area. We were hanging
Nice.
out with Cody, my man friend's family. The
Yeah,
old ball and chain.
I assume you brought your mountain bike.
I did. I brought my salsa, my horse thief.
Nice.
Um yeah, then we went to Horse Gulch, so it was just like I
Horses.
was on horses. I was
So
on
many
feet.
horses. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was great seeing everybody in person.
It was. So I guess what were you? Why were we in person? Maybe we should give a little background.
Oh, yeah. So since we went 100% remote last year, we still, like, culture is so important here. So we try to pull people together at a department level. We do these department summits. And we had about almost half of the company fly in because everybody in client services, which is our support team, our business development team, and our catalog team, everybody all together, all the leaders flew in. And we spent, 3 or 4 days together. It was great.
Hmm. It was great. Yeah. Did you guys any big? I don't know. Big takeaways. What did you kind of walk away with the week from the week with?
Mark, you go first. You were there the whole time.
Well, I think the most important thing, I am not a game playing person. I don't care for games, but Rod Goodman from the client success team
Yes.
came up with this old I'm a kid from Chicago game where you put a rock in between two lines on the sidewalk and you take a ball and you bounce it and try and knock the rock across the other person's line. That was more fun than I've had in a long, a long time. So that was exciting.
That was wild. I played the Scandinavian. I can't remember which country. Scandinavian version of bocce ball. Cube. It looks like cube, but we say it cube.
There was a
We
big
did.
crowd playing that game. Like, that was popular.
That was a good time. Um, Rough. You pretty much just like throwing wood at wood. Um, so it's a good time.
I
But
got we I was in the most competitive wiffle ball match of my life. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it looked intense.
We've got a very competitive team.
Yeah, you guys took out some weather. I'd be worried about like slipping, and I'm not very coordinated.
Yeah, we played through the rain. Like, we could not walk away. It was intense.
No, there you guys were committed.
Yeah, and
and,
there was a
and
dog playing.
There was Atlas, pure joy.
unless it sounded like all we did was play games, we did spend a lot of time in a conference room working on
Yeah.
things, and I think that's always good because as tight as we seem in a given day and how much communication there is, it's easy to drift and not know exactly what's going on across teams. And Susie and I both tend to spend a lot of time in different teams, so it's always good to get folks together. But we learned an awful lot about where the point of sale is at this point, where it's going to be here shortly, what our goals around that are, and how we're doing with adoption already. So that was exciting to be in the same place. And I appreciate Alex coming. He traveled a long way. Our product, what's Alex's official
Product
title?
owner. Yeah, he
Product
kind of
owner,
really
yeah.
drives what is all of the software going to be.
Yeah, he's not just,
E-commerce.
unlike a lot of folks like that could be too serious. He's very serious about his job. He does not take himself seriously. And that makes him a lot of fun in these role playing sessions where we're all using the POS and trying to get used to it. So that was a lot of fun.
And he escorted Atlas, the real star of the show, sweet doggy. But yeah, learned a lot. I think it was really nice hearing from our client success team and our catalog team, and kind of how so many pieces come together to do what we do, and I think offer the services that are kind of unmatched by other competitors.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my big takeaway was just how aligned the team is. Like, yeah, I mean, obviously, great collection of characters, wonderful parts of our whole culture, but the fact that they get the business at the high level and they can connect it to the work that they do is really satisfying as an owner. Do you want to touch on a couple of things that have happened in the last month?
Yeah, let's look back.
Earlier this week, Trek announced the expansion of their direct consumer program. So I think it's been since 2016 that they've been selling direct to consumer. But fulfillment was always through bike shops, and now they have a kind of a balanced program that, a consumer can still take advantage of the bike shop. The bike shop can do home delivery, or the bike can be shipped kind of ready to assemble to the consumer directly. So I think it's kind of an expected evolution. I don't think anybody was really surprised by it. But at the same time, I think that it appears to have caused some worry for dealers. I think the things I've noticed in the brain comments are, smaller markets in particular, or, worry about what it does for taking away high-end bike sales from the shops. And all are legitimate worries, but, the industry's been headed this direction in a long time, and a company like Trek that has a pretty balanced distribution plan, and then the program seems pretty well thought out. So even though, maybe it's not as favorable of margins as if a dealer were to sell directly, still favorable enough to make sure they're participating in the transactions meaningfully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have based on, they're not the first ones to bring this to our industry, based on what we've seen and the trajectory that you've observed over the years? Do you have I don't know, not a prediction. We don't want to get in the business of predicting, but do you think it's a move that'll stick, and will that possibly prompt others? Once a Trek does something, it kind of makes it acceptable, or not the end of the world, so others may come along.
Yeah, I think that my Specialized has been doing it for a year or maybe two now, and it's had. I think any Specialized dealer would say that there's been some pros and cons. I think Trek entering, you're right, it may reduce barriers for others. I think I take Giant at their word that they, don't intend to do that they're really, committed to the IBD channel as their exclusive outlet. Mm-hmm. But then beyond that, I think there's a lot of mystery more around timeline, because it's not logistically easy to do. I think there's liability concerns for manufacturers, and so it may still take time. But I think you're going to be hard pressed to find a major bike brand that isn't shipping direct to consumer in 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
If we just go off of I don't know, the complaints, because I spend most of my time talking to our clients and potential clients, and so I end up hearing a lot of the things that bother them and that are working well, more of the things that bother them often. I almost never hear of complaints about what Specialized has done and is doing. But I do hear the positives from the program from Giant. We hear a lot of people talking about WebLink. We do, even when we don't provide the websites, we provide the technology. So we set up a lot of those free accounts that allow them to report their inventory to Giant. And that's unusual to hear so many positive stories. Usually you only hear the complaints. So on 2 counts, I don't hear a lot of complaints about what Specialized does. And I do hear a lot of positives on the WebLink, Giant WebLink program. I wonder if some hybrid of that, what Trek tries to do, where they're trying to cover all the bases, might not be the end of the world.
I think that, well, it certainly won't be the end of the world. And I think back to your question of, is it going to pass? No, I think the consumer has changed, and it's not all or nothing. I like to avoid that whenever possible, but some percentage of consumers are going to want to buy direct from the manufacturers. They feel that they're capable enough to assemble a bike themselves. So as a brand, you can't just yield that buyer to somebody like a Canyon, because then every brand is very focused on market share, and you can't give it up. But then also, I think from a sustainability of their business piece, there's a big push, especially amongst the large suppliers, to diversify their distribution. Mm-hmm. And IBDs are still the path for the vast majority of their sales, but they're positioning themselves for the market 10 years from now. And that's, I think we said this in the last meeting, but like, bike shops are in the direct to consumer business too, And so we've been talking about this for years, is that, the consumers' buying habits are changing and bike shops can participate in that. And so I certainly encourage dealers to kind of accept that business is always changing, market conditions are always changing. How do you develop a strategy to succeed in that changing environment? And I think that's what that's what we can deliver. And, Shrek just put out their 2025 retailer playbook. I think they might, but it's, they have their top 7 things that they think a great bike shop should do. And one of them is to have a great digital strategy. And, I think it's more important than ever. And I think that's where we fit in. I think, from both the technology and a marketing standpoint, like Workstand is a bike shop's digital strategy. So I feel really good about how we can position our clients.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a very important note to add too. I have a cat sleeping in a dog bed at my feet, and he's snoring.
Oh,
Cat sleeping in a dog bed. That's a sign of the apocalypse, isn't it?
move the mic down there. I want to hear this.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing that, obviously we're recording this in the second week in July. And so that's, we've got all of June's, platform results in. And so I think that's worth noting. I think, looking at kind of platform as a whole results, which is a huge diverse range of our clients, we were roughly flat. We were up about 1%, which is the lowest month over or year over year growth rate of any month this year. I think that both speaks to last summer was relatively strong. This summer is performing relatively equally. But that flat number is, in large part or in part driven by strong Google advertisers and a lot of bike sales. And so if you look at the kind of aftermarket space, or really if you look at that typical dealer that we like to, kind of measure ourselves off of, unfortunately, the typical dealer was down 8% in June, which is, good relative to how some of the earlier months in the year worked. But I still don't like to see dealers down that much. And, kind of a thing that we've noticed in comparing our results to the People for Bikes and Circana overall market data that comes out, 2 months after the fact, is that typical dealer performance is pretty close to the overall IBD market. And so that's not great that after a pretty solid May, June was lackluster. So I'm sure our clients see that and probably are as worried about it as I am. We've talked about this before, but I really hoped that the bike market had hit its bottom, and it still feels like we're looking for it. The end is more in sight than it's ever been, but that everybody would have relished a really strong summer. And so even though site visits, are still, significantly up, consumers are shopping, order volume's down, average order value is up. Those bike purchases are really driving up average order value with a high percentage being sold at discount. So that's really kind of what's leading to that relatively flat performance. But I think something that our customers really like, or the vast majority of our customers, is that click and collect business. And June was really strong for click and collect. Over 40% of orders were picked up in the store. That's roughly at 2019 levels. It's obviously down from the COVID highs of 60%. But it is a sign that the typical dealer is getting a lot of foot traffic in their store off of online orders. And that's huge. Every dealer wants that traffic so they can, build more of a connection with the customer and get some upselling opportunities.
Yeah.
I am eternally optimistic in general, but so not to just go in looking for the positives, but that average order value being up. And when we're talking about a platform like ours, and that's e-commerce sales, back to that topic of the changing consumer, and some just want to buy that way. And some will just want to buy from the brand. They'll want to avoid a local business altogether, but not all of them. And I think that data, that average order value being up and knowing that's bikes coming through websites, should be a pretty strong indicator that if a store's not investing in that technology that we provide or some other way, they're missing something they could capture. It's not like it's out of reach.
think that is such a good point, Mark. I think too many businesses see online sales as lost sales, and that is just not the right way to look at it. Like, there's no reason you can't participate in those sales. And if you don't, that those lost sales, I mean, let's say you see a loss of 1 to 3 to 5% a year. Like, what are you going to do to make that up? I'm with you, Mark. I'm very optimistic for the long term. I think it's just still working our way through this pain that we have, and from an inventory standpoint. And a recent opinion piece in Brain really talked about how ridership is really strong, even though sales are flat. And I can't remember if they spoke to the concept of some demand being pulled forward, but the market's really there. Search volume's really high. It's really just getting consumer spending or purchasing lined up with inventory again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of my big takeaways from our summit a couple weeks ago too is helping guide retailers to take a more active role in creating those selling opportunities. I'm going to go ahead and oversimplify, but who cares where the sale is coming from? It's a sale. That's now your customer. That's now someone that you can build a relationship with more easily. Like we always talk about, acquiring new customers can be costly. Reaching new people, getting to know them in the first place. But once you have them, there are so many tools and strategies and techniques in place that our team really excels at. Another way of kind of, boosting all the good work that we do. But really, it's easier to get them to come back once you've got them.
Yeah.
And yes, but also your cost of customer acquisition is lower if the destination is your website.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you're trying to market to get foot traffic, that's harder than ever before. And so get them to your website, capture a portion of the sales, get 40% of those people coming into the store. And that's a nice complement to the other marketing work you're doing, in order to drive that foot traffic. So we definitely want to see more of that.
Yeah, it's competitive out there. I think this is really, it's the time. I mean, I think we're kind of taking this standpoint on our own as well. It's a time to experiment, try different ways of reaching people, try different messaging, try some different tactics. There's lots of inexpensive marketing tools out there.
Yeah.
So.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, Susie, but you talked about kind of bikes being sold online, and the percentage of e-bikes being sold online, both in the overall data and on our platform, is higher than other categories. Mm-hmm. And so, I think that a lot of the direct consumer brands have really normalized that purchasing. So that's an area where, any bike shop should want to participate because it's the fastest growing category. It's very competitive online, and the consumer's willing to buy online. So get into that space versus just kind of giving up the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
That e-bike buyer goes back. We're talking about that, I don't remember when, but a lot lately. And that they're more the typical retail shopper than they are the historically typical bike shop shopper. So meeting those folks where they want to be becomes really important because they will just buy through those channels. They don't think about, everybody complains about discounting. The historical bike buyer wants a discount. These buyers are just shopping like they do everywhere else, which means less discounting ultimately. So I think it's a big opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, agreed.
What else? I mean, Ryan, before you met us in Gun Barrel in Boulder, do you want to talk about what you were doing before that?
Yeah, I spent the previous week up in Canada. I went to a big technology conference called Collision, which is fascinating. It was a lot of startups. It was a lot of venture capital firms, a lot of established technology companies, and so a lot of educational opportunities, a lot of booths to go visit, and really eye-opening for me about the impact that AI is going to be having on all of our lives, but business in particular. It's been a challenging one for me to get my head wrapped around. But once you walk around, from booth to booth to booth, and you see how it's being implemented in so many different business cases, it started to be more clear kind of what role it's going to play over the next couple of years. But the one that really stood out to me in impacting our clients right away is the impact of what they call zero-click search results. And so as more AI has been brought into Google, consumers are getting more answers without having to click through to a website. And, so that is kind of problematic for certain aspects of the traditional SEO business where you're trying to, win search traffic for things like the best mountain bike or, what e-bikes can I ride on trails near me? So dealers are gonna have a hard time pulling in that traffic, and so it kind of comes back to something we've been talking about for a while, which is product searches. Like you're gonna have so much. I guess the two areas to focus on are going to be product searches. How do you make sure that consumers searching for a floor pump, they see yours? And then location or near me searches. Those are the areas that AI can't really touch. And so those are, if I'm a dealer, I'm wanting to shift, some of my marketing or more of my marketing towards those areas because I'm just going to have a harder time getting consumers to come in for like what we call rich content pages. A lot of our focus on rich content is on more seasonal or, things that, can kind of be a link destination for an email. And then, you change it out for something else because obviously Google likes fresh content. But those kind of pages that are more educational just are going to be less important.
That's not unlike the trend we've seen. I mean, 10 years ago as a company, we wrote and built content completely differently. Than today. So maybe a different, unexpected evolution we wouldn't have seen coming 10 years ago, but just another evolution we need to pay attention to in how we market our businesses.
Yeah, but maybe, and our monthly marketing content are like what we call more internally like our library content. Maybe some of that seasonal stuff that you're talking about. Every month our agency teams puts together, 3 to 5 different seasonal marketing assets. I wonder if that's going to become more and more valuable. It's a little bit, it's a little bit simpler. It's a very product focused.
I think it will be. I think. Well, you mentioned active earlier. I think that the dealers who choose to take an active marketing stance, which means I'm going to send out emails. I'm going to be active on social media. Our content, seasonally relevant, great link destination for those emails. Great way to get a consumer who's already visiting your site into a shopping mode. So a lot of value to those pieces. And I don't mean to minimize, pages that are evergreen, like how to pick a kid's bike or understanding the 3 classes of electric bikes. You've got a lot of traffic coming into your site. And so those pages still have a lot of value in terms of informing your customers and being link destinations for your marketing. They're just not going to pull in those organic search results the way they used to. Yeah.
Still a great resource. Might be not a very measurable resource, the performance of some of those more educational pages, but still I think that's a great resource. And
yeah, I think a shop having kind of a website that's not so deep and complex that it ends up being stale, but enough content to take your typical buyer and bring them a little further along so that when they come into the store, it's a faster sales process.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
What's next, Ryan? You got more travels or you staying put for a while?
I am doing a market visit in Minneapolis in 2 or 3 weeks. And then I think we have the agency summit.
September?
Susie, do you remember? Is that
October.
August, September?
I thought it was
October.
Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah. But I'm working on lining up a couple of other market visits. I want to get out there a little bit more and get connected with some dealers that we don't work with. I want to better understand what their business needs are and what we can do to, potentially kind of earn their business over time. Visit some established clients, celebrate some of their successes, see if I can help them strategically. So I'll probably be spending a week in market, and I'm right now looking to see kind of which of the southern markets is going to be slowest for dealers so they have time for a knucklehead like me to walk in.
Southern dealers, do you need a translator and somebody to help you with the local customs?
It probably wouldn't hurt.
I could join you.
Tell them about, yeah,
I'm sure you could.
tell them about building loyalty.
Loyalty.
One of my favorites. Well, that sounds really fun. I there's some retailers I would love to visit in the Minneapolis area, and then do a little trip. I'd like to ride my bike there more. I only rode around
Okay.
there once or twice. There's some fun stuff, and then I really want to go up to Duluth and mountain bike.
So much fun. Oh, great trails, great environment.
Yeah, I've only
Yeah.
been there in the winter. I'm from the Midwest, and I grew up ski racing, and there was always, well, I don't know. There's some kind of like, I guess if you grew up in the Midwest, there's some famous, notorious ski resorts places in Minnesota, and especially up in Duluth and Lutsen. So anyone that's from the area knows there's some good stories out of that place.
I have a Lutzen story that, so back in the olden times when I was racing mountain bikes in the 90s, there were these regional race series, and there was one up in at Lucin, but this was pre-internet, and so you just had to look at flyers in bike shops in order to know what was happening. Well, I misread the flyer, and so I drove up on a Saturday expecting to race on Sunday, and I rolled in as they were tearing down the race course because it had been the race on Saturday. It was an 8-hour drive. That was a bitter pill.
Did you at least go ride your bike?
Rode my bike, and that was a road trip that I did with Kent McNeil, who now runs IMBA, and so it always gives us something to laugh about when we get together.
That is funny.
Well, this was great. Thank you all for getting together.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess until we'll join back next month and kind of look back at July. Hopefully some good takeaways, and until then we'll see you around the work stand.